Hi everyone, my name is Ryan. Recently, my friends and I had a terrible night in an old abandoned hospital. What we saw there completely changed our lives. I've never been so scared. It all started with the fact that my friends and I were sitting at my house. My parents just went on a business trip for a week, and I immediately invited the guys to my home. We agreed to sit for a while, drank a beer. Someone was with their girlfriend and friends. Everyone was in a happy mood. We played strip cards, joked, and laughed. Among the guests, as I have already said, were friends of my friend's girls. One of them was named Berta, a very bad girl. When she came to my house, she didn't even say hello, and even pretended that I was her guest. She sat on the sidelines all night and just watched us. When we finished playing games, almost finished our beer, she suddenly came to life and suggested playing another, more interesting game. She said that she communicates with the souls of the dead and asked if we would like to see her do it. Of course, many did not believe it, but agreed to look. Berta turned off the lights all over the house and lit a couple of candles. We sat in a large circle and held hands, as she had ordered. Then she took a bat wing, a knife, amulets, and maps from her purse and began to meditate. She breathed deeply and spoke some incantations in an incomprehensible language. At first, we thought it was funny, until she spoke in a strange, inhuman voice. She suddenly called her friend and told her that she was expecting a baby with her boyfriend. "Oh no, it can't be," said her friend, and looked into the face of her lover. It made me laugh a little, but that girl seemed to take it seriously and went to the pharmacy for a test. We decided to wait for her, while Berta sat in the lotus position with her eyes closed and did not breathe. Her friend went to the bathroom, and when she came out, she was standing there crying, holding a positive test in her hand. The two of them went straight home, and we don't know what happened next. When a couple of minutes had passed, I looked at Berta and asked her to tell me about me. I kept thinking that this was some kind of childish joke, and nothing more, but she began to talk in a terrible voice about something that no one in my environment knows about. She said that my parents' marriage is on the verge of divorce, that I had a little sister when I was 3 years old, but she was hit by a car, after which my parents have been at odds for many years, and they will not reconcile in the end. I was terribly sorry to hear such news, but it was true. Each of us then tested the knowledge of the spirits of the dead, and when we received the answers, we were all in a trance. Berta suddenly fell on the floor and said that we should help someone. When we asked her again, she told us to go as fast as possible to an old abandoned hospital on the outskirts of the city. Then she came to herself as if nothing had happened and asked what had happened. The boys tried to dissuade me from going to that hospital, but I said we should do it because the spirits of the dead told us to. Think of it as a kind of quest. It's interesting, I said. Some of the guys went home, but some of them stayed. The 4 of us went there, including Bertha. On the way, the taxi driver 100 times specified the address and said that we can only pay half, but he will not go further out of the gate. We agreed. I was comforted by the fact that the rumors about this hospital are fiction, but we have a great opportunity to find out if this is true. After a couple of minutes, we opened a creaking, rusty door and slowly walked in. There was a sharp, unpleasant smell, but no one knew what it was. It was pitch dark in the hospital, so we armed ourselves with flashlights and went straight down the hall. Berta claimed that something was leading her somewhere, but she didn't know where or why yet, so we trusted her intuition. On the floor of the first floor, it was easy to step on used syringes, scalpels, various cups, and test tubes. After walking a little forward, we saw the reception desk. The whole building looked like a place out of a horror movie, which piqued my interest. Broken windows and crumbling walls told us how many lives were lost here, and how many were saved. There was a cafeteria a little way off. At the second table were 2 cups of coffee, one with cream and one without. Someone had a half-eaten cheeseburger on the table, a woman's purse and crutches under the table. It seemed to me that this day was like everyone else, but then something happened and everyone ran away. Only here from what? And most importantly, why was the hospital closed after that? Suddenly, 4 to 5 rats ran out of a ward to meet us and almost ran down our legs. Berta screamed so hard that my ears nearly popped. Finally, there was a staircase leading up to the second floor. It was also dark and dirty. The two guys who were with us, Woody and Beatty, decided to go first. They were discussing something loudly. Then their flashlights went out at the same time. Berta and I shouted at them, but they were gone. I thought they were joking at first, but no. They seemed to have sunk through the earth at the same time. And at that moment, I was already terribly afraid. I looked at Bertha and saw that she was half fainting. I suggested that she run away from here, but she fell back on the floor, rolled her eyes, and began to speak in an inhuman voice. "You must help her. Must, her body screamed. I looked at her with horror and knew that all I wanted to do now was go home. Berta got up from the floor and came toward me, and I almost kicked her out of the door, but she screamed that I was a freak and a moron. I knew it was her. On the third floor, it was almost impossible to breathe. This pungent, stale smell hit the nose and got to the very marrow of the bones. We accidentally entered some kind of laboratory. I shone my flashlight and saw embryos in various stages of development. They were sealed in a jar in a formalin solution. Berta was still holding on when she looked at them standing in a row, and I was sick. Then I realized that I was specifically afraid, and this feeling numbs my legs. I asked Berta again if we could leave, but she said she would be sick of the dead man's spirit until we helped him. I was beginning to regret it. We gripped the flashlights tighter and moved on. Suddenly, Berta screamed. It turns out that she stepped on someone's syringe. Seeing this, she began to cry. I went on. "Stop!" cried Berta. "She's here." "Yes, who is here?" I asked, and saw the body of an inanimate girl in front of me. It was hidden under a pile of medical supplies. Berta and I screamed until we were afraid of our own screams. Berta began to cry again, and then said that it was she who had called for help. I stood there in shock, holding Berta in my arms, and I couldn't believe what was happening. Later, I called the police. It turned out that it was a girl who disappeared a week ago. She was probably kidnapped by a maniac, killed, and hidden here in an abandoned building. I read about it in the press. When we went outside and talked to the police, our guys Woody and Beatty came out to meet us. It turns out they got lost in the building and found a back exit. We told them what had happened, and they were scared too. We looked at Berta warily, but she was not interested in us. You know, since then, I've been getting into all sorts of spiritualistic seances, and I've even signed up to be Bertha's apprentice. Have you ever had anything unusual happen in your life?
My name is Hannah, and I recently saw my father's true identity and was amazed. It turns out that he was not who he claimed to be all these years. Now I'm not sure I love him. I'm more afraid. The fact is that not so long ago, my parents divorced, and I chose my father so that he would not be lonely. I knew that my mother was strong and she would survive the divorce, especially since it was her initiative. But my father, I was worried about him because he was always not independent, vulnerable. Even though he was in the police, when he came home, he took off his uniform and became my daddy. As for the divorce, their relationship had not been going well for a long time. I couldn't bear to listen to the daily scandals and threats. I couldn't stand it, so I picked up another broken plate and told them to get a divorce. I don't know about your patience, but mine is broken. They both froze, looked at me, and realized that it was finally time to talk to their child. We sat down at the table, but I did the most talking. I was old enough to know that part of the reason they put up with each other was because of me. But I said it was okay. Mom, I'll stay with my dad. No offense, but I'm worried about him. My mother argued for a long time and said that it would be better for me to be with her, but I insisted on my own. When my father heard about my offer, he was very surprised and happy. I've been thinking it over for a long time. It's better for everyone. Immediately after the divorce, my mother went to another country. She promised to come to me for all the holidays, which suited me. To be honest, I was closer to my father. My mother often went somewhere and we were alone, ordering pizza, my favorite snacks, and a lot of soda. The best nights were to eat in front of the TV until late at night. That was my thing with Dad. So when they got divorced, it didn't seem so bad. My dad and I sold the house and moved into an apartment. Just like before, my dad came home very late, and I was already asleep. I took care of the household chores, cleaning, washing, and some cooking. My father wasn't fussy, and sometimes he and his fellow police officers didn't have time to eat at all. So they caught criminals on an empty stomach. It was dangerous work. He was often catching the bad people, an environment which is always dreaming of revenge. The attackers found out that my parents were divorced, and I was left at home alone. As usual, unsuspecting, I ate my supper and went to bed. Already in a deep sleep, I thought I heard rustling in the apartment. I thought it was my dad coming home from work. Before I could really open my eyes, someone bumped into me, closing my mouth with such force that I couldn't move my mouth. Masked men tied my hands and feet in seconds. I was terrified and panicked, ready to scream with all my might. I thought I was going to die. My blood froze with fear, and I had a million thoughts about being killed. I prayed to God that my father would come home soon. There were 3 outsiders. They searched and turned over the whole house. Apparently, they thought that the necessary thing was stored here, but they did not know that my father did not bring anything home from work to avoid such situations. The masked men took everything of value. I was shaking and crying with horror, and they decided to take me with them before they left. My body resisted, and my temperature rose with anger. The bastards didn't care that I was a teenager. With my mouth tied, I couldn't call for help. I wish Dad would come soon, I thought for the last time. And suddenly, I saw one of the bandits fall to the floor. The second gets a foot in the face. It was my father. He's here. My eyes were still streaming with tears, but I felt a sharp sense of relief. I had no doubt that my father would save me. In a matter of minutes, he had 3 of them down. At this time, I had managed to free my hands and mouth. I sat on the floor and breathed deeply, still unable to speak. 2 were unconscious. Dad went to the 3rd one and asked what they wanted. The bandit only spat in his face, which angered my father. Dad threw him to the floor and hit him in the face with all his fury. He was already unconscious. I think his nose was broken. His teeth were knocked out. There was blood everywhere, and Dad didn't stop. He beat and beat on the head with his fists. I shouted, "Dad, stop! Stop it! Enough! You'll kill him!" Then I ran to him, but he pushed me with a bloody hand so hard that my body flew away like a doll for several meters. There was a fire in my father's eyes, as if he had passed out and was being controlled by the devil himself. It was a terrible sight. I was even more terrified than when I was kidnapped. The 2 men came to their senses and tried to escape, but my father took out a rifle and shot it right in front of me in our house. Only then did he exhale and calm down. I've never seen such a monster in my life. I became afraid of him. He saw it and understood it. I didn't speak to him for about a week, and then he called me over to talk. "I know you're afraid of me. I'm sorry you saw all this. I didn't want to, but this is how I am at work. I am a police officer, and I have to fight crime. And here, the situation was doubly terrible. These bastards tried to take away my most valuable thing. You. I didn't want you to see dead people, and I didn't want you to know that your dad can kill. But I want you to know that when I'm eating pizza with you or watching cartoons, I'm real. I will never hurt you in my life, daughter. I'm still your dad," he said. Yes, I wanted to hear those words. I burst into tears and hugged him for the first time in so long. Then he said he couldn't risk my life, so he called my mother and told her everything. A minute later, she appeared on the doorstep. "I can't risk your life. My job is too dangerous. It will be better if you live with your mother, and I will visit you," he said. I felt sad. I didn't want to leave him, but I knew that he would feel much more confident knowing that his daughter was safe. So I didn't say anything and went to get my things. I gave him one last big hug, and he said I was the only one who made him better every day. Who knows? We're all not perfect. The father in the devil's guise was protecting his child. Can it be justly justified? Subscribe to this channel, because there are still many cool stories.